A significant majority of Acts is given to a detailed account of the missionary journeys of the Apostle Paul. We're going to look at those in this chapter and also his final journey from Jerusalem, escorted by Roman soldiers, to Rome for his trial and ultimately his death. If one embraces, as I do, the theory that Acts was written by Luke to inform the public defender Theophilus, who was assigned to Paul's case, it makes sense why these detailed accounts of his journeys throughout the Roman Empire exist in the manner that they do. Acts is essentially a historical book. They go to great pains to show how Christians, and especially Paul himself, broke no Roman laws across the empire. Even though there was chaos, there were riots, there were major reactions to his ministry, he never incited any of this. He didn't do anything to encourage it. The issue was always actually with the Jews, not the Romans, and not this Christian, this man that was a part of what was referred to as the Way. The detailed conversations with prominent Roman leaders and their verdicts of not guilty also adds credence to Paul's message and his conduct. For you and me, it's a fascinating collection of sermons, healings, miracles, church plants, stories that give us an inside look at the life of early believers in these various communities from various cultures. And as the gospel was moving from Jerusalem and throughout the entire world, this Jewish sect was becoming a worldwide Gentile network of Hellenistic Greeks, Romans, Jews. Now you're going to find a map in this section that I've included that will be helpful to you to trace the journeys of the Apostle Paul. You might want to have that open as you're reading your scriptures and follow it along. And you'll see the extent of his travels and realize that most of this was done either by foot or in the tiny ships that people were sailing in those days in the Mediterranean Sea. Very dangerous traveling conditions in both cases. So take a look at this now and begin your adventure with the Apostle Paul as he leaves his home church in Antioch for each of these trips to preach the gospel to every living creature. In light of these journeys that you've just read in the Bible, I think it's important that you take a look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 16 through 33, where in his own words, Paul helps us understand what he endured, what he went through, how he suffered for the gospel on these trips. Now, I want you to do the following as we come to the end of this course. First of all, read my summary of the highlights of the 4 trips again. Do the recommended reading of scriptures, which I hope you've done by now. If not, complete it, of this section of that book. And then make sure that you've completed all of the reading assignments for the text that are found in the introductory section of the course. The learning activity that I'd like you to do now is about Paul's ministry in Thessalonica. You know, if you take the time to read his own words about his time among the Thessalonians, it's an interesting comparison to the historical account in the book of Acts that reads like a newspaper. Well, the reading of Thessalonians is more pastoral as Paul explains what was going on between the lines and the headlines of the book of Acts. Thessalonians shows us what was really going on pastorally in spite of the opposition and the chaos that resulted in the establishment of a very healthy church, to which 2 very important letters Paul wrote that are a part of our New Testament scripture. As you look at these 2 sections, as you'll see on the screen there, in Thessalonians and in Acts, I think you'll understand that while sometimes it seemed like all hell was breaking loose when Paul would go into one of these cities, that in the midst of all of that, the Lord was doing something powerful and eternal in the hearts of people who were making a choice to embrace the love of God. I think in the days in which we live, with people rioting in the streets and people acting in a very anti-Christ way, that we can also find comfort in knowing that in spite of what you might see on the TV, what people might be threatening, what people might be saying, that God is at work, and he's building his church, and he's establishing his church, and his work is going to go on in spite of all the noise and all of the rancor. Thank you for joining me in this study of the introduction to the book of Acts. I hope that, like myself, this book will now become one of your favorite books in the entire Bible. God bless you.